Thank you for joining us. Israel is a center of world religion and also for the Bahai faith. The Bahai faith began in Persia in the mid-19th century with the teaching of its basic tenets, the unity of all humankind, and the progressive revelation of religious truth. I'm here at the Doubletree Hilton in Skokie, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, to interview Joyce Litoff, representing the Bahai National Center, and Mr. Van Kilmer, the Director of Music, who will share with us the history of the Bahai faith and its relationship to the State of Israel following these messages. With us now is Joyce Litoff. It's a real pleasure, finally,
it's a
to get you
pleasure
on the
to be
show.
here. I'm happy to be here.
Tell our audience a little bit about the Bahai faith.
Yes, I'm a member of the Bahai faith, and the Bahai faith is an independent world religion based on the divinely inspired teachings of a person named Baha'u'llah. And the name Baha'u'llah means the glory of God. And Baha'u'llah has brought revelation from God for a new society, for a modern global world. We understand that there has been spiritual teachings given to these divinely inspired prophets and messengers throughout time in different places of the world, in different eras. And the one most familiar to the Jewish people, of course, would be, the ones most familiar would be Abraham and Moses. And Baha'u'llah is the teacher for this day and age. And his teachings are for global society. And Baha'is believe that there is only one God. So the Jewish people would understand that as Adonai Echad, there is one God, and that we humans are created in God's spiritual image. And it is our duty to recognize the godliness in each person. And the way we serve God is to serve other people. So in Judaism, there's a concept of tikkun olam. So Baha'u'llah has brought new revelation from God that we believe is teaching for a new era, a modern age in a global society. The idea is that there have been great spiritual teachers who have brought revelation from God in different places in the world at different times. Those who would be most familiar to your viewers would be the prophets of the Jewish revelation, which would be Abraham and Moses. And Baha'u'llah brought new teachings that both reiterate some of those spiritual teachings and share new social teachings for a new world, really. The idea is that humans are created in God's spiritual image, and it is our responsibility to recognize the godliness in one another. How we serve God is to serve one another. And in Judaism, there's a concept called tikkun olam, which is repairing the world. And it is our responsibility to be partners with God in this repair. And the teachings that Baha'u'llah brought are kind of blueprints for how, in this modern world, we can go about and actually see results in creating peace and unity in the world. And I would say to your viewers, if they don't remember anything else about the Bahai faith, they should remember the concepts of unity, that we believe in the unity of all humankind, and service, that we believe in being of service to one another.
Now, there are many Bahai members all over the world, in fact. One of my very best friends, a pediatrician named Dr. John Williams, British, lives in Israel and is a Bahai member for, good Lord, decades. Anyway, so where are the Bahai members residing in the world? Are they concentrated in one part or are they all over?
There are Baha'is in every country of the world. There are between 5 and 6 million members of the Baha'i faith. It's a little bit hard to get exact numbers because there are places in the world where people cannot openly declare their belief. In each Baha'i community, wherever there are 9 members, that's one less than a Jewish minyan, they can get together and create what we call a local spiritual assembly. Then in larger communities, each year this group of Baha'is would elect a 9-person assembly, a spiritual assembly. Every year, those assemblies would get together and elect a national spiritual assembly. And then once every 5 years, those national assemblies elect a Universal House of Justice, which is 9 members. And the seat of the Universal House of Justice is on Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel. And the Universal House of Justice administers the international affairs of the Baha'i faith.
The gardens in Haifa are spectacular. I've been there many times. Speaking of Israel and Haifa and persecution, Baha'is have been persecuted in Iran and elsewhere. Maybe we shouldn't get into that right now, but in Israel, Baha'is and members of other faiths are free to practice and are safe. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, the Baha'is who are in Israel are there for limited amounts of service. There are about 700 people who work in and around the Baha'i World Center. They come for a designated time of service. They come from 65 different countries, and when their time of service is finished, they go back to their own countries. There are about 500,000 people who come every year to visit the Baha'i Gardens, and several thousand of those are Baha'is from all over the world who come as a pilgrimage to visit the holy sites.
It's interesting to note that Israel is a center of world faiths and Baha'i is in Israel as well. How did that happen? How did that occur?
To understand how the Baha'i World Center came to be on Mount Carmel, I have to give you a little bit of the history of the faith. So I'll go back to 1844 with a person that we call the Bab. And the Bab is actually a title which means the gate. The Bab was born in Shiraz in Iran. In those days it was known as Persia. And the Bab had teachings for people saying that really it was a time of spiritual revolution and that the people needed to awaken and prepare themselves that there was going to be new revelation from God. So his teachings really spread like wildfire. Thousands and thousands came to follow him, and in the history books this is known as the Babi Revolution. I really didn't know anything about this until I became a member of the faith and read some of the history. And one of his followers was Baha'u'llah, and the followers of the Bab were very upsetting to the government of the day and the clergy, and the government and the clergy did what they could to stamp out this revolution. They tortured, they imprisoned, they persecuted the followers. So Baha'u'llah, as a follower of the Bab, was imprisoned. What I would like your Jewish viewers to understand and to have some context for who the Bab was is for them to think about when they attend a Passover Seder and towards the end of the Seder when they open the door for Elijah. And I don't know that people really think that something immediate is going to happen when they open the door, but it's opening the door to the possibilities that there will be a new spiritual energy in the world, and the possibilities that we can achieve peace, and the possibilities that we can work together to create a new world. And this is the spirit that the Bab embodied, the spirit of possibilities to create a new world. So as a follower of the Bab, Baha'u'llah was imprisoned, along with other followers of the Bab, in horrible conditions. Because Baha'u'llah was of noble birth, he couldn't be executed, as was the fate of many of the followers of the Bab of the day. So instead, the government, the Ottoman Empire's government, exiled him repeatedly. And his final exile was to the prison city of Akka, which is on the shores not far from Haifa. It was horrible conditions. It was a penal colony, and the description is that the air over the space was so foul that the birds would fall out of the sky as they passed overhead. And it was there that this small band of Baha'is found themselves and made really friends with the locals and established very good relationships with them.
Having visited the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa so many times, they're just breathtakingly beautiful. What is the significance of these gardens in Haifa?
The gardens are very significant to Baha'is because there's an idea in the Baha'i faith that gardens are similar to the beauty that's found in humanity, in the diversity of humanity. Baha'u'llah said that ye are the fruits of one tree, the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. The second significance of the gardens is that we consider what has grown on Mount Carmel to be fulfillment of ancient prophecy. And I would like to, if I may, read a passage from the Torah. This is from Isaiah chapter 2. And I'll give my Devar Torah as I go along. And it shall come to pass in the end of days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the top of the mountains, and that's Mount Carmel, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And that's all the people of the world coming to visit these beautiful terraces. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And we see that in the future, the Universal House of Justice shall be giving guidance for how people will deal with one another. So the law shall go out of Zion. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall decide for many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. This is a famous passage. It's inscribed on the exterior of the United Nations. And we see the era that we're entering to be an era that is poised to have universal peace and harmony in the world, and that what is happening on Mount Carmel is a sign that this era is to come.
The book of Isaiah, beautiful poetry. A question I'd like to ask you is, what is the relationship between Baha'i and the State of Israel?
Well, Baha'u'llah was brought to Israel by the Ottoman government in 1868, 80 years before the establishment of the modern state of Israel. And he was brought there as a prisoner. And as I had mentioned earlier, his friends established very good relations, those who were not themselves imprisoned at the time. So this was a small community of Baha'i exiles who had joined him, and they really cultivated those relationships with their neighbors of all backgrounds. In fact, when Baha'u'llah's son, whose name is Abdul Baha, passed away in 1921, 10,000 people of all backgrounds, attended his funeral in Haifa. Under the British mandate, the Baha'i holy places were legally recognized. And then with the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, cordial relations were established with members of the Baha'i faith. And it was in 1987 that a status agreement was made that recognized the Baha'i World Center as a center of world religion. The Baha'i faith is entirely nonpartisan and takes no position on the conflict that is occurring in the area, in the region. All costs that are associated with the upkeep of the beautiful gardens and the buildings are borne by members of the Baha'i faith. They're voluntary contributions that come in from all over the world. And there is no contribution made by any government, any organization, or any individual who is not a member of the Baha'i faith.
The Baha'i Gardens in Haifa are a major tourist attraction, and many people all over the world, as you say, not necessarily only Israelis and Jews, but people from all over the world come to visit. Mm-hmm. How would people learn about Baha'i and get more information about visiting?
Mm-hmm. The gardens are open to the public, and people can go on a particular website to either find out what the hours are or to sign up for a tour. And that website is www.baha'is.org. Bahai, GANBAHAI.org. For your viewers in the United States that would like more information, they can visit our Bahai website, which is www.bahai.us.
I'm afraid we have to take a commercial break before our next guest, Mr. Van Gilmer, also from Bahai. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us, Joyce.
Thank you for having me.
I'll be right back.